We're finding out the hard way that when farmers hurt, so do we. Inflation, rising interest rates, farmers barely breaking even while supermarkets make record profits, high fuel and energy prices, supply and shipping problems, government market interventions on what and how much fertilizers farmers can use, how much water they can use, what they can do with their land, how much farmers pay seasonal workers, dodgy weather forecasting causing massive losses, bad weather causing fruit and veg imperfections that supermarkets just won't touch, so farmers dump tons of food. What a waste. Money lending discrimination from activists within banks so farmers can't get loans, skyrocketing insurance, green tape and more. Pretty soon only politicians and CEOs of utility companies will be the only ones able to afford avocado on toast. G'day, I'm Mark from Self-Sufficient Me, and in this video I'm going to give you my opinion on why I think farmers globally are under attack and how this affects the cost of living for all of us. And then I'll also give you 5 things you can do to combat the rising cost of food. Let's get into it. I'm not sure if it's complete incompetence and mismanagement or something more sinister from the powers that be, but it's clear that farmers here in Australia and around the world are getting the rough end of the pineapple. And this is adding to the incredible rise in living expenses primarily suffered by the poor and middle classes. For over a decade here on YouTube, I've been an advocate for growing as much of your own food as possible. Not just to save money, although that's always a big incentive, but food gardening in general is good for health and well-being. It has excellent educational value for us, and especially if you have children, better and fresher tasting fruit and veg. It gives you self-sufficiency and independence. It creates an environmentally positive ecosystem in your own backyard and lowers your carbon footprint if that's important to you. So it's fair to say that I haven't been the best friend in the past of big ag or corporates like supermarkets. But I do acknowledge that they play an important role in feeding the masses because they work at scale, are convenient, consistent, they employ a ton of good people, not everyone can grow their own food, and in a perfect world, grocery chains allow farmers to reach more households than they would otherwise using traditional markets. However, if these corporates become too concentrated and have limited competition, like a monopoly or duopoly, their market power becomes a big worry and can be open to things like bullying, profiteering and corruption. In the USA, fertiliser prices are growing faster than GMO corn, tripling in price from $510 to $1,508 a tonne in just 12 months. That's not GMO. These price increases are then pushed on to the consumer and we pay more at the checkout. Farmers in the States are also receiving less money for their harvests, but this decrease isn't reflected in savings for the shoppers in the supermarket. In Australia, farmers are starting to speak up about what they see as price gouging by the major supermarkets. They are noticing a considerable difference between what the supermarket pays for their food at the farm gate and what it's sold for to the public. Of course, the supermarkets are defending themselves, saying that these markups are to compensate for the rise in their operating expenses. And whilst some of that might be true, when you post billions of dollars in record profits at a time when the rest of us have less money paying more for everything, such as staples like food, water, rates, electricity and fuel, plus a mortgage, the average Joe and Karen gets a bit suspicious. The Australian government has just announced an inquiry into the price gouging issue, and they've pledged to act if they find any unscrupulous supermarket behaviour. But unlike a visit to a public outback dunny, I'm not going to be holding my breath. Earlier, at the end of winter and into spring, our government-run Bureau of Meteorology, or BOM, as it's affectionately called, predicted that Australia was going into drought. But this summer, it hasn't stopped raining. And that would be fine and even funny, except that this information caused a slump in cattle and animal markets because the market expected there would be no grass for the cows to eat by midsummer, which in turn led to farmers selling their stock at low prices. Of course, if farmers had kept their livestock, they would probably now be chewing through green grassy paddocks. But instead, they're probably mowing it with expensive diesel on their tractors. Now, why did the bomb make such a firm and alarming announcement? Was it in good faith? Or are they a bunch of vegans knowing full well that this weather prediction would hurt cattle and sheep farmers? You will eat the bugs and you will be happy. Over in Europe, Dutch farmers are under pressure to sell up their farms to the state in an $8 billion buyback scheme aimed at reducing farming in the Netherlands by 50%. The reason for the reduction in farming is to reduce nitrogen levels overall in the country. Most Dutch farmers don't want to sell their land or cut their business by half, which is understandable, and would rather look to technology and innovation to solve nitrogen problems. Less produce means more competition and higher prices. Right now in Germany, thousands of farmers are protesting the government raising taxes and abolishing fuel subsidies. Similar protests happened in France not long ago and also in Ireland, but the truth is it's not necessarily the handouts that farmers want, because they wouldn't need that if energy prices were reasonable and they got a fair price for what they produced. But the German government thinks it can all be fixed by farmers transitioning to electric tractors. It reminds me of that song, Electric Dreams. It's the ridiculous cost of energy, electricity and fuel, plus high-priced fertilisers and the inflated cost of water that's making it so expensive to grow food for the average farmer. And who caused this? Government policies and their actions or inactions over this past decade or two. Out of control inflation, the boogeyman that our politicians and mainstream media want us to think came out of nowhere like John Wick in a action flick. In fact, the current inflation woes was born around 2020 out of poor governmental decisions collectively around the world. You can't bring the globe to a standstill, pay healthy young people a ton of cash to stay at home and watch Netflix without causing some massive economic pain. Stopping the supply lines disrupted shipping food and other commodities around the world in a major way. Add to this striking workers, failing infrastructure and a lack of security. No wonder we're paying through the nose to put food in our mouth. You can eat this end. And due to the rising cost of fruit and vegetables, people are buying less and thus they're eating less, which has prompted this warning from the Queensland government. The dangers of people getting scurvy and rickets in 2024 is a real thing. I'm not joking, people are getting diagnosed with malnutrition-like diseases in a first world country because it's cheaper and more convenient to buy junk food. You can't make this stuff up. If we're not careful, the good farmers who take pride in their produce and, just as importantly, their land, will get bought out by corporations hiring cheap labour who have no skin in the game, and we'll end up paying even higher prices for poorer quality food. The conspiracy theorist in me thinks that it's a deliberate attempt by elites to control us through food. But it could simply be that the powers that are running the world at the moment are just incompetent. Regardless, what can we do to insulate ourselves against the rising cost of food? Well, I've chosen 5 top things that we do here on our property to combat the rising cost of living when it comes to eating. And now, some of these tips will be a bit of suck eggs to some people, and others will hopefully find them very helpful. Number 1, grow something. Anything will help, not just in savings, but also in satisfaction. which is really important when times are tough. There's nothing better than knowing that you've saved 10 bucks not buying a fistful of herbs from the supermarket. Every little bit does help when your finances are on the edge. Believe me, I've been there. When I left a good paying job in the army to become a home dad, the money soon dried up. So I turned to backyard farming, growing as much as I could, and this saved us the 1%ers to survive hard times. It wasn't easy, but we did it. And depending where you live, you could grow a ton of fruit and veg and herbs. Produce that is typically expensive to buy at the store. Foods like garlic, ginger, mangoes, peppers, dragon fruit, rare herbs, and of course, avocados. That's just naming a few, and they can grow really well depending on the conditions. Think about shortages and natural disasters. Even cheap crops like lettuce can suddenly get ridiculously expensive. You can pretty much grow salad anywhere. Number 2, cook your own meals. Eating out all the time or getting ready-made foods is expensive. Processed junk food might be cheap, although prices are rising there too, but it's terribly bad. And what you save in groceries, you'll probably pay tenfold in health bills down the track. Making your own meals is easy and much cheaper. Where possible, make 2 meals out of one. For example, if we boil a corned beef for dinner, the next night we use the leftover brine and meat to make a delicious soup. A roast lamb leg one night turns into a rice stew dish the next day. It's cheap as chips. Not having the time to cook is an awful excuse, especially if you're stressed, because cooking at home is relaxing and takes your mind off work. It's healthier, so your body can cope with pressure better, and financially, it saves money. Number 3, use cheaper foods. Cuts of meat like chuck steak and chicken, or high carb foods like corn, potatoes, or a substitute like this taro or rice can be filling and tasty meals. Combine these foods with a few extra herbs and spices grown in the garden or in containers, and the flavour profile will have you eating gourmet. Poor people in third world countries have known the secret to making more from less for thousands of years, so we can do it too. Number 4, cook with lower costing fuels. If you can get your hands on a fuel source for free, like wood, you can save money cooking with that. Some folks deliberately go to fancy restaurants just to experience food cooked over fire. That smoky smell and flavour. Well, you can do the same, if not better, and certainly cheaper at home. Cooking with gas used to be cheap here in Australia, but it's not anymore, even though we have some of the biggest gas reserves in the world. But if gas is cheaper than electricity where you are, then having a gas or wood-fired barbecue once or twice a week is a money saver. Number 5, buy from the farm gate and shop around. Don't buy just out of habit or those silly loyalty schemes. I mean, you can save a few bucks here and there if they come along, but you shouldn't just concentrate all your shopping in one spot. The only person that wins or group is the CEO of the corporation. Every time you buy something from an independent business, however, it gives them slightly more market share from the big guys and creates competition, which helps to lower prices. If you can buy direct from the farmer, especially if they're reasonably local, that's usually cheaper and the produce is fresher. Some farms have stalls on or outside their property, or they sell at the markets, usually on weekends. Yes, it might take an extra effort to find and visit these places, but it's often worth it to save money in the old skyrocket, hip pocket. I'm not saying you should stop buying from the supermarkets altogether, but sharing your retail dollar around not only helps smaller businesses, it encourages more variety of products and gives us more choice. You can find some real gems of products in smaller grocers and farmers markets. At the end of the day, I do think we are currently going through a period whereby mismanagement at the highest level and a mix of weird hysterical ideology is making an imbalance to the way we trade. and prices for essential goods and services have become unfair for many people. So I give this message to the World Economic Forum. I'm growing this next pineapple for you, Klaus. Having said all that, I do think the cost of living crisis will eventually get better as people see through the spin or feel the pain to such a point that policy directions change for the better. But it probably will get worse yet before relief is on the way. If you know any tips on how we can insulate ourselves against the rising cost of food, please share them in the comment section below. If you're new to this channel, we've got a really great cross-section of preppers, gardeners, self-sufficiency people that write some excellent comments and tips in the comment section. So make sure after watching the video you scroll through below and suck all those tips in, because I do that all the time and I'm learning so much even now after doing this for so long from all you people out there. So yeah, I encourage you to write comments and to read them. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a big let's smash this cost of living thumbs up. Keep up the rage, people. You can do it, especially if you're doing it tough like I know many of you are. Just keep punching through, keep punching on. We used to say in the army, just keep fighting through, because you will eventually break through, and we collectively will break the spirit of the big guys who are trying to put the thumbs on us. Anyway, I won't get into a big rant right at the end of this video. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now. Cheers. You can never have enough pineapples.